I'm Mike Alcoholic. I was thinking about what to talk about, and it was made really easy. I went to a meeting the other day, and the whole meeting seemed like it ended up being talking about what failures we are and how we can't do anything right, and of course, they let it off page 21, where it talks about here's the guy that's been puzzlingly, more or less, always insanely drunk. And you know, I got to thinking to myself how easy it is to fall into the trap of giving myself something to live down to and talking about the old me, so to speak, and laughing about, you know, pissing in the closet thinking it was a bathroom and a blackout. You know, we laugh about these stories, but you know, I started thinking about the newcomers that were in the meeting and thinking about the duty that people who have been here for a while have to maybe share slightly about stuff like that, but to also qualify it with, but that's not the way it is now. There was a meeting when I got here a few years ago, an old-timer who had, I guess, 20 years there now. He's still around. Percy said, I'm the same sick, selfish son of a bitch as the first day I walked in, and I still don't know anything. And I memorized it because it had an effect on me. I was like, wow, this is the old-timer up in here saying he's the same as when he walked in, and he still don't know anything. And I'm thinking, Now I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to throw out some fake humility to tell everybody I'm still teachable. Okay, but that's not how it came across. And that's not what my disease wanted to hear. My disease wanted to hear that this program doesn't work, and he is in fact the same person. And there's nothing worth learning, because that's in fact what he said. And then, you know, I realized in my tenure here that, you know, we have a duty. Joe and Charlie even says it, the duty of old-timers to come in and say what we need to say. He says, as those of us who have recovered have a duty to come in meetings and say what we need to say regardless of what people think about it. Because if we fail to do so, we turn AA over to the sickest of the sick, and then we would wonder why it doesn't work anymore. Now, that's a quote. I tend to believe in that, and that has changed how I share my message from the time I heard that, and reflecting back on some of the things I heard when I got here, realizing how delicate of a balance we hold in meetings, and there's newcomers in here and they need to hear a message of experience, strength, and hope, not war stories, weakness, and despair. And I got to thinking about page 21 and how most of the times that I've heard that page, it has been on the negative and the things we did and the guy that's been puzzling you and the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he's more or less always insanely drunk. And he's pulling down the house of cards. And then, of course, what ensues is story after story after story about how we pulled down the house of cards. But what I realized upon closer inspection on page 21, and I was heartened, not disheartened, to find out that there's actually more good about us on page 21 than bad. And I began to ponder, I wonder why we don't talk about all of that. Well, the fact of the matter is it's easier to give ourselves something to live down to instead of something to live up to. And that's something that Bill W. said that was absolutely crucial, that we give ourselves something to live up to, because I believe we can rise to the occasion. I'm going to go over some of these good things on page 21. There's not as many newcomers in here. This topic lends itself to a room with a bunch of newcomers, and you're saying, this is for you. There's a bunch of old-timers in here. But I think it's important to be aware of the duty that we have as all new old-timers here. I know there's more than enough for me to say. There's a bunch in here. To be cognizant, I need to be cognizant of the message that I carry. And it talks about on 21 here, begins to talk about the good. It says, he may be one of the finest fellows in the world. You know, and as a newcomer coming in here, just having admitted that I was an alcoholic, I remember like this pall of negativity, I believe I felt, that just landed on my head, that it It consigned me to a life not only of being stupid, boring, and glum, but everything I thought was wrong and everything I did turned to shit. Because that's the feeling I felt. This was a crushing blow at the age I came in here with. I could not imagine it, not to mention the fact that I was in a room full of old people, which now I'm sad to say I am one. But these steps don't make me feel old. I still feel young. It talks about finest fellows in the world. It talks about here he has a positive genius. I think that's important to say because I believe that we do have mental faculties. Even our book talks about we can rely after we work the steps on our mental faculties with assurance. God gave us brains to use. Flies right in the face of that lie I told myself that my first thought is always wrong. And I've actually been in meetings where old-timers say, my first thought is always wrong. And I'm thinking, are you thinking about who's listening, bro? Because I'm here to tell you, my first thought is not always wrong because of the training I've gone through in recovery. It's not a bold statement. It's not an arrogant statement. It needs to be a statement of fact, and it is the way it is. We worry too much about what people think about what we say in here, and we don't say what we need to say because that's what a newcomer needs to hear. There'll be a time when I can think for myself. That's not an offensive statement. It talks about here, he often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything but liquor. I thought that the fact that this alcohol problem, it bled into everything I did. And I didn't realize when I got here that if I can work these steps and put this alcohol problem at bay, all my dreams of life can continue. I can continue on the path of having hobbies and loves in my life. And what it says on 133 can be a reality. It says, no one among us shows any mark of dissipation. And I think that's a very heartening thing to think about, that we can emerge from this barn of death, so to speak, and emerge somebody that might not be recognized. And I say the barn on purpose because in the doctor's opinion, it talks about there was a guy that locked himself in a barn, destined to die. And he said that the guy emerged. And after he worked the steps, the doctor found himself unable to recognize him, and he went into a political campaign. We all know he wasn't successful in that, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is he put on a suit and he gave it a shot. He was transformed. It talks about here he often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes and has a promising career ahead of him. I believe that to be absolutely true. I believe that we're some of the most industrious, creative people on the planet. How else were we able for a time to hide our disease from everyone and still maintain a semblance of a career? We are chameleons, but the effort that it took to do all that, we do have special skills and abilities. And we are very creative people. I've met enough of us in my travels and know from myself that there are things we can just do better than the average bear. Of course, we drink better than they do too, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about that problem being solved. He talks about here he uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself. And the bright outlook does not have to be followed with what it's followed with on page 21. I can keep that bright outlook if I work the steps. Why does it always have to be followed with, he did good and then he messed it up? The steps tell me that I don't have to do that I can just throw away that last part of the sentence. If I follow a few simple rules and maintain a certain simple attitude and continue to do this thing on a daily basis, even though I don't think I need to come to meetings, these things I need to do, but the effort that I put into this is a fraction. As Dr. Bob said in his story, if I put half the zeal into this that I put into drinking, my Heavenly Father won't let me down. It says here in another part of the book in employers, it's talking about us being employees. It says there are 2 alcoholic employees who produce as much as 5 normal salesmen. And I know that's true. Anybody that's in here that's ever worked themselves out of a job because you run circles around everybody. And I know we do this. We can do this. I have experienced that. I shared about it in the meeting the other day. And when I worked at Health South, I was working too damn hard and was going down there asking too many questions and made somebody nervous. at Healthstop, and they fired me. I should have just sat my ass in the chair like everybody else and just did my little deal, but there I was, being the overachiever that we are. But anyway, I'm just trying to prove this point. And then another part, it says, isn't he fast thinking and imaginative? And that's the end of the good things that I have discovered in the book. But boy, that's enough. It covers the full gambit of the positiveness of us. Our abilities, we can have an outlook, we can have abilities, we can be fast thinking and imaginative and creative. I think that it's important to say that out loud, because I think enough of the meetings have enough of the other side. And I believe that the good needs a fair hearing. And I just wanted to throw this topic out. I call this topic page 21 the good, because page 21 gets enough of the bad. So we've got something to share about. I touched on a million different things, and as I was sharing, a bunch of different things came up in people's mind, but the common theme was we share a common solution, as it talks about on page 17. Because sharing in a common peril is only one element. But it would not bind us together as we are now bound. So that's what the topic is today. I appreciate being asked, and I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and I'll pass.